American culture is full of ghostly tales passed through generations as part of its history, even with little to no proof they ever really happened. There are a few, however, that stand the test of time. The terrifying Axeman of New Orleans is a tale so gruesome you'll wish it was a myth, but it's not. Between May 1918 and October 1919, the city of New Orleans, Louisiana was seized with fear as a vile presence dubbed the Axeman roamed the streets, taking lives wherever he pleased. With each successive horrifying event, authorities developed an MO they could recognize immediately. The culprit usually cut an opening hatch in the bottom of the door to gain entry. He never took anything valuable from the scene, but he always ransacked the home. The most alarming clue of all, he used whatever he could find in his target's possessions to do them in. Most often, an axe. There were at least 12 souls who fell prey to this mystifying maniac. He wasn't always successful, and left a few witnesses as well. Joseph and Catherine Maggio were the first said to experience the Axeman's keen steel on May 23rd of 1918. As they slept in the apartment above their Italian grocery store, the Axeman crept into their bedroom through his quietly made hatch and used his gruesome tool to end their lives. Police were baffled when they found no valuables taken, but instead, the Axeman's soiled clothes were left behind. Another grocer, Louis Besummer and Harriet Lowe, his paramour, met a grisly fate in June 1918. The Axeman snuck in and attacked them in their sleep, leaving giant wounds in the sides of their heads with Mr. Besummer's own axe. Mr. Besummer survived, but Harriet passed from her injuries 2 months later. On the same day that Harriet lost her life, Anna Schneider, who was 8 months pregnant, had her date with the Axeman. Police were scrambling for suspects, but were never able to make a case against anyone they arrested. Despite his brash tactics, the Axeman eluded them like a faint stench in the air. Another target attacked in her sleep, this time with a bedside lamp. Her husband found her still clinging to life when he returned home from work. She had obvious injuries to her head and face. Amazingly, Anna recovered and had a healthy baby girl 2 days later. Pauline and Mary Bruno heard a scuffle coming from their Uncle Joseph Romano's bedroom. They went in to see a dark-complected man in a dark suit and drooping hat running away. Joseph Romano sustained 2 open head injuries and passed away 2 days later. Charles, Rose, and their 2-year-old Mary Cortmiglia were next on the Axeman's list. A neighbor heard them screaming and rushed over to find Charles and Rose badly injured and young Mary fatally injured by the red-stained axe left leaning on the back porch. Another grocer, Steve Boca, was attacked in his sleep by the axe-wielding invader. He survived with deep injuries to his skull, but could remember little of his traumatic incident. Sarah Lauman met the Axeman in September 1919, when he slipped in an open window. Neighbors found her bleeding from head injuries and broken teeth. Although she recovered, she too had no memory of the attack. In the midst of his deadly spree, the Axeman gained notoriety by publishing a letter to the citizens of New Orleans in the Times-Picayune, where he called himself a demon from hell. He claimed he was no mere man, but a spirit bent on mortal misery who gave a return address to hell. It was a lengthy letter full of brags and threats of the terrifying plans he had for the future. He explained that he loved jazz music, and when he walked the streets on the next Tuesday night, whoever had jazz music playing would be spared from his heinous attacks. As a result of this outlandish request, a song became extremely popular in 1919. The mysterious Axeman's Jazz, "Don't Scare Me, Papa," played all over the city and is still a part of the culture. There were several suspects throughout this torrid tale. One of the first suspects in the case was Joseph Maggio's own brother, Andrew, a local barber who owned the razor found to be part of the attack. Andrew and a third brother, Jake, had heard strange sounds coming from Joseph's bedroom 2 hours after the attack. They went in to find the couple badly hurt. Police found it off that no one heard any signs of commotion earlier, but Andrew explained he had been celebrating his leave to the Navy the next day and was overly intoxicated. Andrew was the prime suspect for a while, but eventually released when no further evidence could be produced. After the attack on Louis Bessumer and Harriet Lowe, police arrested 41-year-old African-American Louis Obicon, who had been employed by Bessumer just a week before the attacks. While no evidence associated him with the incident, he was arrested when he gave conflicting stories on his whereabouts. A lack of further evidence eventually allowed his release. In a strange turn of events, Mr. Bessumer was the next suspected culprit when police found letters in his store indicating he may be a German spy. Harriet, going in and out of consciousness in the hospital, also told police she believed he was a spy and that he had harmed her with his hatchet in the past. Charges against Bessumer for espionage were dropped, and several police officers demoted when no evidence ever surfaced. But he was jailed for the demise of Harriet when she passed a short time later. He served 9 months before a jury decided there was no proof of his guilt. James Gleason was the next to be charged, simply because he ran from authorities when no evidence could connect him to the tragic events, and he explained that he ran out of sheer fear of the police. He was released. Rosie Cortimiglia named the next 2 suspects to make the list. She claimed the 2 neighbors who found her and her family after the attack, Orlando Giordano and his 18-year-old son Frank, were responsible. Although Orlando was 69 years old and in poor health, and Frank was a 6-foot-tall, 200-pound man, too small for the Axeman's entryway, they were arrested. Charles denied his wife's claims many times, but the 2 men were found guilty. Orlando received a life sentence, but Frank was sentenced to hang. Charles divorced his wife after the trial. She eventually recanted her story. She said she felt pressured to blame her neighbors and that St. Joseph had come to her in a dream and told her to tell the truth. Police threatened her with perjury, but the men were eventually released. No one else was ever charged in these ghastly events, and the Axeman's identity is still unknown. Theories abound on this mystifying historic case. As many of the Axeman's targets were Italian immigrant grocers, many people still believe the events were culturally motivated. Italians were prospering in the area with more and more Italian-owned businesses cropping up each year. Was it possible the Axeman was carrying out a cruel vendetta against Italian business owners? Many people think so. Some people think he was on a bizarre crusade for jazz music, hell-bent on increasing its popularity. Other people think it was the work of the mafia, especially after it was revealed that Mike Pepitone's father, Peter, had previously taken the life of an Italian grocer who was on the lam, wanted in Italy for illegal mafia-related activity. A growing number of people believe that the Axeman had more targets than officially reported. They believe that the Axeman started his tirade as early as 1911 and continued long after the Pepitone case in 1919. Anna Andolina is another unofficial target, not recognized in official accounts of the Axeman. She and her husband barely survived an attack that left them both with gaping injuries. Somewhere around 1919, the terrifying Axeman of New Orleans disappeared into the annals of history. In the 110 years since this horrific series of events, none of these theories or suspects have been shown to be undeniably true. In all probability, we will never know the true identity of the Axeman. Drop your theory on who you think the Axeman is below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to be reminded of fresh, new content.